So why are you here? Are you here because you like Denver? Was the topic interesting? Are you new to Denver and just trying to figure it out? I see at least a few people here who are probably here because they worked for one of the speakers and felt like they had to be here. And there's probably some who wanted to hear some of these speakers because we've got a pretty amazing group of panelists who are coming up today. So when we started to think about this topic, we had a title that was a working title that was a little bit, it was either boring or maybe even a little plagiarized. We were talking about things like tech hubs and tech meccas and stuff that had already been said or done a lot. And then my marketing director, Ashley, had the good idea to ask, is Denver the next tech frontier? Which was a lot better, because at least it talked about our frontier heritage and probably addressed our real potential a little better. I'm seeing nods even as I say that. And then we started thinking about what else could it be, and we started to distill that conversation down to what's the frontier? Denver? And then somebody, Christy from Graphic Creative, suggested, let's just go ahead and be a little edgier and say, WTF, Denver? Or WTF, Denver? And that led to a bunch of other topics like why the fuss and who's on the forefront and what, is this fun? And all kinds of things like that. And so that's what we're going to ask today is, what's the frontier? WTF, Denver? So as we describe this town, I want to ask you how you describe it, how you think of it. I'm going to ask some people to get involved here. Give me some phrases or words that describe Denver. Booming. Booming. Nice, great word. The edge of the mountains. Okay, I like it. Maybe the edge of a lot of things. Certainly at the forefront of a few things. Anything else? What else? Sorry? Active, yes. High. Thank you, Mr. Darlow. Do you mean in altitude, in feet? Of course. What else? Anything else? Millennial? Yes. Others? Generation X. What about mountain town, ski town, any of those things? Lifestyle. Technology? Yeah or nay? Yes, a lot of nods. Okay. So it clearly means a lot of different things to a lot of people, and a lot of us like or love it here, right? Who likes or loves it here? Perfect. That's why you're all in this tent. So that's great. But what we're going to ponder today is that specific question of, can Denver be the next tech frontier? What's the frontier? WTF, Denver? So as we think about that, hometown proponents, hometown champions would say, sure it can. And they'd use a lot of data to say that. Who's in that camp? Who thinks it can be the next tech frontier? Who's there? A lot of hands up. Give me some data on why. Thoughts? Talent pool's amazing, says a recruiter. That's awesome. Centrally located. Yep. What else? Tech is going lifestyle. That's great and perfect for a couple of panelists we have here. Good stuff. Any others? How many companies, any idea how much venture capital was deployed here last year? How many companies were funded? Maybe exits, anything like that? Thoughts? Roughly 800, what gets quoted a lot? 800 to 850 million or so of venture capital, about 130 companies funded, $35 billion in exits. Sounds like a big number, but is that big? I don't know. Somebody's shaking their head saying not at all. So how many people are moving to Denver roughly every month? Just really quickly. One more data point. Heard 10, 12. A number of 16 to 20 gets quoted a lot. I think that depends a little bit on how broad the area is you're looking in. Sure feels like a lot on the streets, doesn't it? In traffic? Does to me. What about that? So we're the coolest, right? Great place to live, amazing growth. What about naysayers, counterpoints? Anybody disagree? I got a lot of nods on the yes, but any naysayers? What's that? Wrong tint? For the naysayers? There's got to be a couple. Give me a contrarian view, something. Boom and bust economy, maybe even a boom and bust culture. We'll come back to that. Denver shoots itself in the foot sometimes where growth is concerned. Yes? Infrastructure, great question, great point, very constrained. What else, Mr. Darlow? Lifestyle against it. Interesting, counterpoint, like it. Somebody shook their head on the exits number. Just let's talk about venture capital really quickly. Roughly how much venture capital got deployed in Silicon Valley and San Francisco last year? Any idea? Nope, 25 or so billion. So we're 800 million going to 1.3. They're 25 or so billion. Doesn't feel quite so big now, right? And there's a lot of folks who are probably sitting here going, you know, why does it matter? And they too probably fall into two slightly profoundly different camps. One of which says it matters a lot because you have to be exceptional to be relevant. And then other folks who'd say, who cares? This is arrogance and ego. And let's just be what we need to be us. And maybe even some people who are saying, shut up, all you loudmouths. Don't tell anybody else what we've got, and let's keep it small. I got one profound nod in the front up here. And Denver has a history of that as well, right? And I'm not saying that's intrinsically bad. I would posit, though, that the nuanced answer to this question lies somewhere in between those fairly polarized endpoints. That Denver, a city of about 3 million people, sitting in the center of the country, at the edge of the Rockies, gifted with magical outdoor spaces like Red Rocks, proximity to iconic towns like Aspen and Steamboat, and imbued with a true heritage of frontier boldness and compelling to literally nearly everybody who visits her. And you've all seen this. You bring a partner or a company to visit your company. You bring a family member to live in your home or stay in your home for a day or two. It's like, wow, I really like it here. It's cool. It feels good. I love it. It's almost universally the reaction. But at the same time, constrained by her lack of scalability, her lack of infrastructure, like Loveland Pass as winter approaches, right? With no diversity or little diversity except for streets like Federal and pockets around the city compared to a lot of other places. Burdened with crime, schools, and traffic that are increasingly not a benefit, but a burden in making daily life here better, and with a history of sometimes using glossy words and denial of her challenges. I'd argue that Denver is more a city perched on a precipice. And she could either come out on the side of being profoundly relevant in things like tech and healthcare that can really make a difference, or she could fall short and join the also-rans that are fundamentally forgotten. I would also argue that the decision of which side of that precipice she comes out on will be made by people, a lot of the folks who are like folks in this room over the next several years. So with that in mind, I'm going to basically stop talking except to introduce and ask questions to my panel, which are a really extraordinary group of folks. I have some of the best CEOs in this town who have chosen to build their companies here. I have venture capitalists who have literally left the valley to come make bets on nothing but Colorado's entrepreneurship. I have people who are breakthrough pioneers in non-traditional education and some of the best recruiters of top executive talent in the world. I have developers, visionary developers who are transforming the way this urban landscape looks, and city planners who are thoughtfully asking the big picture challenging questions of how do I create scale in a place as constrained as we are. And I have creative food and beverage and culinary folks who are essentially trying to create a culture that's uniquely ours and a life that's fun and worth living in a place like this at the edge of the mountains. So with that, I'm going to bring those folks up and we'll get them all up here and ask a bunch of fun questions. So the first one is my good buddy David Levin. And David is an entrepreneur that has boldly succeeded in one of the most competitive spaces in the country. The digital out-of-home space, I had the displeasure of competing a little bit at the edge with him in a few years ago. And Dave was a friend personally and always has and was kind, but he kicked my ass in business. I'm glad I didn't have to compete with him directly because David is smart but ruthless and focused on scalability and winning in his market. He's built his company, Four Winds Interactive, from inception to over $65 million in revenue and almost 400 people. And so with that, I'm going to bring up David Levin, and I'm going to ask him a very simple question, which is why he decided to build Four Winds here, what's been better or worse than he expected, and has being in Denver actually helped contribute to where they've come. David Levin.
Like, you should just keep going. I think we could all listen to you speak.
I think they're about tired of me. It's time for you guys.
I don't know. So let's see, am I answering those questions now? Oh gosh, so now I have to remember them. They were,
why here?
Why here? Anything surprising?
Yep. And has Denver really helped? Are you guys better or worse for being here?
Okay, so why here? We didn't ever contemplate somewhere else. It wasn't like the company was moved here, the company started here. And I came here to go to school at CU Boulder in the 90s, and I had grown up in the Midwest, and I wanted to go kind of farther away from home. And when I got to Colorado, it was the first time I saw the sunshine, like really saw the sun. And I know everybody comments on it, but it is such a big deal. Like, I became happier in Colorado. So there was never, like, after I graduated from school, I never thought about leaving. So the company started here. My business partner in the company was born here. He's a native. So that's why we're here. And is it a good place to build a business? Is that? What's that? Yeah.
Good place to what? Build the business?
Yeah,
I mean, is it what surprised you, and has being in Colorado really helped, or would you have done the same thing everywhere else?
Yeah, what's really surprised me, I guess, is the last couple years. When in 07, 08, our company was located in a big mansion on the side of City Park. It looked like a big house, Parkside Mansion. And people used to just like wander in and look for jobs. Like, people would come in with their resume, especially 08, 09, and now it's like, it is so hard to recruit in Denver. It's especially for technical positions. So that has surprised me a lot. And does Denver help? I don't know. I feel like we could have done what we're doing in other places, but I think it does help. And I guess I'll go back to the sun. I feel like people here are happy, people here are authentic, people here, live a more active lifestyle, and that creates, people that are just, want to succeed at everything they do in life, and that, I think, provides the foundation to build a good company. So yeah, I guess I think Denver helps.
Cool. Good stuff, Dave. Thank you very much. Obviously, the logical segue after the talent might be to Jim Deters, but I'm going to still keep my order, because we know that startups can't happen without capital. And so it's very important to get a VC up here into this mix pretty soon before we bring up another founder. So I'm going to bring up Kirk Holland. And Kirk, just for background, was on my board. He introduced me to my current company and is an amazingly insightful and helpful investor, literally like no one I've ever seen. He's also known as that guy who'll take a call from almost any entrepreneur, both to understand their challenges and just to get to know them. He'll give advice. Kirk, maybe there's probably a few in the room, so you may be a little screwed by that one. Sorry about that. But with that in mind, he came from Silicon Valley and built a business at Access Venture Capital here, which is literally focused on nothing but Colorado-based entrepreneurship. So I want to ask Kirk, as he comes up, what literally inspired you? What did you see? What was different? What made it worthwhile to leave the Valley and come and essentially over time focus here? So with that, Kirk Holland.
I guess to answer your question, it really was two parts. The first decision I made was to get the hell out of Silicon Valley. So I really, seriously, I was there through the bubble, spent most of my career in California, and in kind of 99, 2000, I felt like, it was all about the money and the fame and the quick hit. It's like flipping houses as people want to flip tech companies. So I didn't really feel like it was a community anymore back when it was. The stories I tell about the two straws that broke the camel's back were one was personal and one was business related. There's a place in Woodside called Bucks where VCs and entrepreneurs have breakfast fairly regularly. And one morning, I think it was 01, I walked in there, and another young VC friend of mine early in our careers, he literally was there in the corner of the room with like a Hollywood level production studio filming him meeting with an entrepreneur. And the guy, I'd known him pretty well, his ego had quickly got very, very big, even though he hadn't really done any great investments that made money. So the Silicon Valley was a rough place from a business perspective. And the second thing that was very important to me, our second daughter was born, and we wanted to raise them in a normal place. The straw that broke the camel's back there is my oldest, who was 3, getting ready to go into preschool, and me and my 2 buddies went down to the little local church where we were going to send her to preschool, and we got there at 10 p.m. and camped out till 5 in the morning when 250 dads behind us for like 12 spots. So those were the 2 straws that broke the camel's back for me to decide to leave Silicon Valley. From there, like any VC, I had my criteria, and the criteria, it was a good place to raise my daughters, and a great place to invest in tech startups over a 35-year horizon, which is what I was looking at, how long I'd be investing. So I looked at Austin, Colorado, Portland, Seattle, and San Diego were the 5 markets that I looked at, and did a lot of research and data, and felt like this was the best place for us based on both the tech ecosystem as well as the personal opportunity to raise our kids here.
That's great. I'm going to come back to some highlights of what that data was and some things you saw. And again, sort of like I asked Dave, how that's evolved. Has it been what you expected, better, worse, et cetera? But let's get a few more folks up here, and then we'll come back to that one. So Dave's business is software and services. So is mine. So is most of Kirk's portfolio. Maybe all of your portfolio, really, right? Almost all. So that says tech talent, right? And what kind of talent? What particular kinds of tech talent do you need to build those kind of businesses? Anyone? Developers, yes. Thank you. I'm hearing it from over here, too. Developers, what else? Scrum Masters, Agile folks, product line managers, dev leads, etc. So with that, who's heard of a company called Galvanize? A lot of hands. Good. Jim, the marketing's working. As is the actual experience. So Jim Deters, with a couple other visionaries a few years ago, founded Galvanize, which is one of the first and most innovative, we believe, firms for non-traditional education, particularly around technology. It's also a wonderful co-work space and amazingly progressive, and is now doing that not only in Colorado, but in a number of other cities. So for Jim, the question I want to ask as Jim Deters comes up is, what were the insights that led to the foundation of Galvanize? What made you guys be at that kind of vanguard of creating this kind of educational product and process? And tell us a little bit about that as you come up. Jim Deters.
Wasn't very long intro.
Well,
we're gonna sit down.
No, you don't. Whatever.
Oh, so answer the questions. I moved to Colorado a long time ago, and the story I like to tell is I came here like the generation that's been coming here now. I moved here for lifestyle. I came here because of the sun, because of these big things that come out of the ground over here to the west. I wanted to ski and snowboard and hike and mountain bike. And I started creating software companies in the basement of a house in Wash Park, way before it was cool to be an entrepreneur. There were no accelerators. Venture capital was still not really a thing. This is in 1998 when I moved here. And that's when the excitement of what's going on in Silicon Valley really was taking shape. The browser wars are going on. And I moved here as a punk kid that, wanted to, snowboard and write software in the basement. And got pretty good at it and created a pretty successful company and sold it and traveled the world, and then built another company based in Austin, Texas. And for the next 10 years, I traveled the globe building some of the largest web infrastructure in the world. And like a lot of talented people in Colorado, we spent a lot of our time not in Colorado. A lot of executives I know sit on airplanes I see a lot of times flying to New York, flying to San Francisco, and hence the last time we hung out was flying back from New York City on that late Delta flight. And upon selling that company, I knew there was a great demand for talent. And in fact, our business we were a very large IBM systems integrator, we created talent. We built our own code school inside of that company in 2006. And so after selling that company and building Cholan, the restaurant with my wife and Chef Lon, I was watching this undercurrent take shape. And basically, real quickly on the thesis, that there was an entrepreneurial renaissance taking shape. And it was led by 3 major shifts going on. The first is always a demographic shift. We had the largest human population ever, the millennials, were coming of age, becoming adults, looking for employment. And they too were choosing lifestyle like I chose before they were choosing careers. At the same time, the Great Recession was going on. And at the same time, we had complete tech computing ubiquity, meaning that behemoth in Seattle that's looking for another HQ was finally pervasive after they launched Amazon Web Services and EC2. Compute power cost pennies. So literally, your only limiting factor to be successful were 2 things. Was what skills you had, could you build your own business, could you code it, et cetera, and who you knew. And who you know gets you access to money and mentorship, et cetera. And what a lot of people probably don't know is the way I kind of stumbled upon this opportunity was angel investing around town with my co-founder Lawrence, who's in the crowd. We just started writing some checks around town, and you get pretty popular when you write checks around town. And I'm like, I don't know, this is censored. Holy shit! There's like this whole undercurrent of this renaissance taking shape right here in Denver. You know, this is 2009, right? I'm like, whoa! I didn't realize this was going on in Denver. I spent all my time all over the world, and that led to this idea of how do you coalesce that energy, and that's where the name Galvanize was born. How do you condense that to make it more efficient and build more efficient market using community, curriculum, and capital? And that's kind of how the thesis came about.
That's fantastic. And how many, remind everybody where you are now?
So we have 8 campuses, 2 in Denver, Boulder, Seattle and Pioneer Square, San Francisco south of Market. We opened in the Warehouse District in Phoenix, Austin in 2nd Street District downtown, and we have a West Soho campus in Manhattan now.
I think maybe Jim picks campuses based on cool places to visit. What do you think?
Indeed. This entrepreneurial renaissance is happening, I mean, very relevant to this discussion, right? This is happening everywhere at some degree. We just happen to be, I think, growing exceptionally faster than some other places.
I think everybody in the crowd's volunteering to help Jim in ops at this point. Be like, have to go to those places. So
we could use
good.
you.
All right, let's keep bringing a few more folks up, and then I want to dive into a bunch of these particular advantages and disadvantages of Denver and the what would we have to do to be as much as we can be. So we now have, you know, we have CEOs, we have companies, right? We have capital, we have tools like training and technology and particularly people, which is important. But founders aren't typically very good at building things like succession plans, which they often need, or even management teams, which actually can help them grow and scale. Somebody's laughing up here, really, I like that. Not giving founders a hard time, I don't know that many of them would deny that, right? A few of these guys have been differently successful at that than others. So what do you need? You need recruitment of top quality talent. So Jayne Ford of Revel Talent is doing this in a different way, taking on some of the bigger recruitment firms and whispering CEOs and bringing top tech talent to this town. Boy, that's a lot of T's. So with that, Jayne, as you walk up, tell us a little bit about what are some of the biggest and most vexing challenges, or the most common and vexing challenges you guys are taking on when you're trying to build out teams in Denver. Jayne Ford.
Top challenges we're seeing with tech talent. So it's funny, when I think about last couple of years and work with different CEOs of tech startups, there's a couple themes that always tend to come out. One of them is, do I make or do I buy my talent? So do I hire the young, scrappy, smart person that I really like, lower cost, or do I hire the person that's a rock star that's been doing what I need somebody to do and build my company quickly? Example of that, I've got a health tech client right now. CEO knows SEO, SEM, Facebook quite well. They think those are the tools they really need to drive top of the funnel customer acquisition. So going to hire his first director of performance marketing, what's he gonna do? He could hire a young, scrappy person. He could basically train that person how to do all this. But as a CEO, what does he need to be focusing on? He needs to be working on product. He needs to be working with marketing, he needs to be driving strategy, and frankly, he needs to be working on funding right now. He doesn't need to be teaching somebody how to do paid AdWords. So what are we looking for? We're looking for somebody that's been a rock star, doing performance marketing, expert in SEO and SEM. It's gonna cost him a little bit more money down the line, but from a growth perspective, he'll benefit from that greatly. And you know, bringing that back to Denver, one of the reasons I chose that example is, I think it's a place where maybe we don't have as much depth as other markets. You just think about the number of startups in the Bay Area that have performance marketing experts, and they're all learning from one another. So if I were going to say, if you're going to do a search in that area here, look here, it's a competitive market for people that are great at that here. Yep. So you might want to lurk outside, and you might want to pay somebody a starting bonus that helps them with a relocation cost to get them here. I think we'll have depth of that in this market down the road, but it's just going to take quantity to get there. So that's one thing. I'd say the other area that we see issues with is everybody wants to hire the unicorn. Frankly, all my CEO clients, which I love, all think they have the next Uber, and it takes that to start a company, right? But they want to hire the unicorn to run, for example, their marketing. So I've got a client right now that they're targeting gig economy employees, and their initial marketing objective was to go after partners. So they're going after the Ubers, the Postmates of the world, so they would have access to their gig economy employees. Worked great for a while, but what they realized actually is their highest net promoter score was actually from people that were finding them organically through SEO. So we're talking about hiring their first CMO for the company, and initially the CEO, this will be actually their first marketing hire. He said, Jayne, I want somebody that knows partner marketing, has depth in that. Oh, but that's done go-to-market strategy for B2C companies. You look at that, there's about 20 of those people in his market that are rock stars. They're running huge teams, huge budgets. So what we've done is regrouped and said, what's really important right now from a growth perspective? Let's hire somebody for you now that's going to be great for the next 2 years, that will catalyst your growth. Might not be the right person 5 years from now, but at this point, it's narrowing down what are your objectives and how do you get there. And I think in Denver, we have a lot of depth in those senior levels. We have a lot of people like you that move here for a company and say, we love Denver. We love, our kids love this, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of depth of talent here to pull from.
Cool. Hey, with that in mind, and we're about to shift gears to add a little more kind of culture, lifestyle, infrastructure, city building, those kind of things. But real quick for the entrepreneurs up here, and Kirk, as we talk about your portfolio company, just quick numbers off the top of your head. How much of your teams, Jim and Dave, made versus bought, ballpark? And then Kirk, as you look at some of the teams in your portfolio.
Make for most. I mean, yeah. I mean, our best, because we've got 12 years behind us now, so some of our strongest leaders have worked across the company and then take on more and more responsibility. We've brought in some killer people in key positions, but if you look across almost 400 people, Make has worked for us really well.
Okay.
And I would say it's a size thing, right? You have to scale to a certain point where you can do that, and you can actually have time to train your talent up too.
And that's more art than science. I mean, we've hired, we grew from 0 to almost 400 employees in 3.5 years. We hired almost 500 people, and in a couple years' time. That's, you make and you recruit, and it's more art than science, as you have to do exactly what you said, Jayne. You can't always recruit that CFO from a publicly traded company to come and run your high-scaling startup, because unfortunately, these great talented managers are hooked on restricted stock units at their publicly traded companies, and it's very hard to compete with those compensation packages, which happens over and over. So you got to do this art/science of growing your own, recruiting your own, and finding the best fit at your scale, and that's really, and I'm sure Dave knows, we can share all sorts of stories of, it's very, very challenging to do, right? And sometimes companies outgrow people and people outgrow companies. And that's often some of the non-fun parts about building a company.
Quick.
I mean, I would add that now it's probably 80 to 90% make and 10 to 20% buy. When I first got here, we can talk about this later, when I first got here 16 years ago, it was 98% make and 2% buy. I like the trend, and I'd like to get more buying and more human capital importing.
Nice, I like it. Good stuff. And I was going to go and ask, is it ever tough to get people to come here? But I'll come back to that, particularly once I get Kyle up here, because one of the things that always leaves me flat in conversations like these is we stop at talking about this stuff, right? So you're talking about companies' capital, you're talking about C-level talent, you're talking about the rank and file and their knowledge base. We don't talk about lifestyle and culture and other stuff. Great, I got a great job. My life sucks. That doesn't last very long, right? Doesn't work. You're going to change something. So you got to talk about the people who are actually making a community vibrant, alive, inviting, interesting, not just a corporate ecosystem that works, but also, do you want to live and work here? Is it fun? Is it interesting? Is it worthwhile? And so Kyle Zeppelin is one of the more visionary developers in this town who has done so many things to try to transform these urban landscapes into places that are inviting, that are sustainable, that are fun, that are vibrant. And so as Kyle comes up, I want to ask him to tell me a little bit about his vision of what we can be in Denver. Kyle Zeppelin.
Thanks for including me. Yeah, I think that's kind of what gets us up every morning, keeps up late at night, trying to figure out how to make things work better. So we're mostly focused on the Rhino neighborhood in Denver, trying to do some more catalytic projects. Started at a pretty early stage 20 years ago, really focusing on new economy workplace, probably before the term even existed, and just trying to do a little bit more with buildings as far as recycled former industrial buildings, build into every project some major amenity features that aren't typical. We branched out. We have a site called Taxi that's 28 acres on the river. We have early childhood education. We have a fitness center, a swimming pool made out of recycled shipping containers. So really, you got to bring a lot to the table. It's not enough to open up a building and think that's going to fill itself up. People are working more remotely. There's a lot of companies moving here, but you just got to offer more value. And then in the retail space, we have a project called The Source, which is a recycled 1880s former foundry. We have 12 or 13 businesses in there that are all kind of a diversity of companies around craft food production. Some of the most renowned restaurants in the city. But again, it's not enough just to, you can only eat one meal. We basically hosted within the last couple of weeks the street art market in combination with the Crush. It drew, between the two events, drew like 25,000 people to Rhino. And there is an appetite for art, for culture, for design that's more nationally relevant. Denver's a city of transplants. We've gone to major markets in LA and New York, Miami, and there is clearly an appetite for companies to locate out here. For national retailers, we're on the map, but there's clearly a need for some private initiative, and then nobody's moving here because it's 2 minutes faster to commute from Westminster on the highway. They're moving here because it's bikeable, walkable, active, and so we have had a lot of our time that gets deployed into trying to influence some of the infrastructure and public projects to work better for the people that want to live here.
Good stuff. So this is, I wanted to bring these last few folks up to expand and diversify the thinking, and that's exactly what some of the things Kyle's alluding to do, thinking about the more holistic lifestyle in the place. I want to keep taking the fun factor up a little bit. We're still talking a lot about business, and living, but you've still got to keep people, not just say they've got education, they got the right amenities, they have the pool, they enjoy where they live. They still got to be able to socialize, entertain, blow off some steam, enjoy themselves, right? Take out their friends and their family. So I'm going to ask Troy Gard, who is the most successful business person in the restaurant and hospitality industry in this town, I would posit. Maybe people would argue. But he is also, even better than he is as a businessman, is his creativity. He's a very dear friend. So I think if I ask the right questions, I can get him to give creative answers and not just business answers, and that'll probably be pretty easy. So Troy, we've now got fun places to live. We got great companies, we got jobs, we got talent. Some of it's C-level, some of it's not. We've got capital, we've got all these things. How the fuck do we keep these people happy? Troy Gard.
Good intro, like that. How do we keep everyone happy? Food and drink, right? That makes me happy. Hanging out with good people, social environments, experiences. What does the guest, what does our friends like when they come in to eat? They want to celebrate a great deal. They want to celebrate, they got the VC to give them some money. They got, all these great things up here. Getting a job from Jayne here is they want to go out and celebrate. And so what we try to do with our restaurant group is really give three things. It's about the ambiance. You want to have a killer ambiance. And I think if you go to any of our tag restaurants, Some check averages are $9. Some check averages are $90. We try to give a great ambiance. Next is hospitality. That's what the whole business is about. You have to have hospitable people. You have to have people smiling, taking care of people, and that's, you know, and of course great food and the drinks and cocktails go hand in hand. But I moved to Denver here 17 years ago, and I've lived all over the world: Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong, New York, Hawaii, California, and the list goes on. And someone said, hey, you should check out that place, Denver. And I said, it's in the middle of where? It's cold. It's, you know, why would I give up all these other cool places? And the minute I got here, you know, the sunshine was a big thing. The people are really incredible. And I knew it was going to be up and coming, like you said, too, looking at Seattle, San Diego, Austin, all these other cities. I wanted to be in a place the next 25 years where I could really make a stamp and put my name on something. And New York, I mean, as amazing as it is, and I love to go there and eat my face off and then walk around, you know, I'm not going to make a big splash there. Here, I feel I can make a big splash, and we have started to. And in 8 years, almost 9 years, we've opened 10 restaurants and 8 different concepts. So we still have one opening in November, one in March, and we're now looking at branching out of state. So I'm super excited.
Good stuff. Great. So now, last and arguably most, Tami. And I'm just kidding, no knock to any of you guys, but I say that because Tami is last because she's going to bring an overview and an understanding of Denver that probably cuts across all of ours, to be candid. Tami runs the Downtown Denver Partnership, and what that means is she is tirelessly working constantly to help think about and solve the toughest challenges that Denver has and take advantage of its assets to make it a better place for all of us. DDP sponsors Startup Week, for those of you who don't know that, which obviously has now grown to 17,500 registrants, as announced this morning, a huge new record for them, which is wonderful for Startup Week. And Tami's going to talk to the big picture challenges that cut across all this stuff, right? So all of this is great. What if we don't have enough internet pipe? What if we can't get to work on time? What if we don't have safe neighborhoods or good schools? What if this whole life thing doesn't work for all of us? Then we've still got challenges. And how do we make that exceptional at a citywide scale, given our constraints and our history? So with that in mind, Tami's going to talk first about some of the bigger challenges and maybe the bigger assets that face Denver as she looks across it. Tami Dorr.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, what an awesome group of people here helping build a great city. I am going to talk about some of the challenges. Generally, in a public setting, we try to, promote all the positive things that are happening, but when you're building a city, you have to really carefully and strategically look at what needs to happen. And as many of these individuals here are scaling companies, scaling developments, scaling neighborhoods, scaling restaurants, my role is to help scale a city. And by scaling a city, I mean that our companies are only going to grow in the space that we create for them. So is this city big enough to bring the type of workforce we want, to bring the type of investment, to keep these people here? And when we look at it, it's all of those components that go into building a city that will do all of those things. So Harris asked if I would take a moment and touch on some things that we really need to think about. And for all of you in this room, these are things we all need to carefully consider. Number one, housing affordability. Now, we're seeing a trend. The gap between salaries and housing is growing. Some of that will stabilize, but how do we prepare for the future? We need to look at mobility. What does that mean as we continue to grow as a city? And we look at everything from sustainability to just density and population. And three, how do we ensure that as we attract more people here, give them a place to live, that we're building a public realm and a place and a space that will give them the environment to be inspired, to create, to connect, and to truly build a community.
Good stuff. Thank you, Tami. So now we've got this extraordinary set of people on stage, and I do want to thank them quickly. I think this is one of the most diverse and accomplished groups that's ever been put on a stage at Startup Week, and I'm humbled and flattered and appreciative that they came to join this thing.
Well, maybe not very diverse, but you know.
Well, when I say diverse, I mean thinkers. We're going to come back to the other kind of diversity in a moment. I mean breadth of thinking and
maybe
expertise.
a negative about Denver.
Yeah, fair point. Well, we can start with that one if we want. What we're going to do now is hit in a fairly rapid-fire fashion a handful of topics or questions. They'll opine based on their expertise. And guys, limited as we've talked about, 2-3 folks to each one, kind of relatively rapid fire as much as we can, kind of playing off one another, debate if you want. But I'd rather get through more than less of these topics, and we do want to let these good folks go a little before obviously this thing was earmarked for an hour and a half. We're not going to keep you here that long. So a couple of things. Let's start with a relatively easy one. A lot of it's been said about Google's new headquarters or new location in Boulder, and the potential. We're all abuzz and a Twitter, pun intended, about Amazon's search for a new HQ, and that we're making a bid there. Would these things be good or bad for Denver? Somebody?
There's a big pause. I think that when you're at the space that we're in as a city, we've grown really fast. We're a young city, and we've had these exponential leaps in growth. So as a culture here, we've been a little shocked by our own growth, and then we sort of don't know what to do with it. So every time we make a big leap, we're like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
And we have to readjust. And I think these conversations about bringing these incredible headquarter companies here, which we've really lacked in Denver, and these types of companies bring all kinds of attributes with them. They help. Some are concerned, well, what about having enough employees? But they bring employees, and they bring new knowledge, and they bring new connections, and we could use a few of these big ones for sure.
Cool. Anybody else? One more?
I think it's absolutely great for Denver if it happens. There's some backlash against it because we haven't made key investments in affordable housing and transit that make it very difficult to account for. There isn't urban transit in Denver, so things like a streetcar system that could be easily rolled out for less than the cost of the DIA upgrades or the National Western Center. That could really allow people to live in Denver and not have to be car reliant. And then same thing for affordable housing. The total annual budget for affordable housing is the same as the welcome sign at the airport, which means that we don't have a budget for affordable housing. So it's kind of getting left up to the market, and that does lead to a kind of nativist backlash. The other thing is, I think I can't read Amazon's mind, but the existing headquarters says that they want to be urban, they want to be part of the culture, which means they want to be downtown. We have some great sites for that in and around downtown, and it would be unfortunate to see them go into Broomfield or DIA corridor, but I guess crazier things have happened. But I think it is great for Denver if they end up downtown.
Was anybody dying to get in? If not, I'm going to bridge off that to diversity, actually. But go ahead, Jim, if you want to jump in.
I'll tie it all together. I think one of the reasons we've grown so amazingly well is because of the forethought of a lot of the things that you put up on stage here, right? The renaissance has happened here at an exponential rate because we have the amazing walkable urban culture. This was an urban entrepreneurial renaissance because we have great restaurants, because people have thought through pedestrian right-of-ways and walkable living and great coffee houses and entertainment and hospitality, the second largest performing arts center in the United States, right? That's why it's growing here. And we'd be crazy to not think that these are great things for these types of companies to consider us, because I think there are many communities in this country that would be killing for these types of opportunities to come to their communities to create affluence and opportunities. But the challenges do exist, and I think to tie it all together as leaders of our community, we need to be thinking what is next to keep the pace of growing. What do we need to be looking out 10, 20, 30 years? What should we be doing as leaders today that set up the next big move and the next big leap for our community? And but it's amazing that we're on the grid for these opportunities. But we need to plan for decades of challenges, and we should be making those decisions and investments now.
Yep. Let me bridge to diversity, because Dave, you mentioned it, and affordable housing is obviously an easy link to that, right? If you don't have affordable housing, it makes it tougher in some ways, but this town is not diverse in a lot of ways. Either ethnically, it's not as diverse gender-wise. In tech as we'd like. Tech is not as diverse gender-wise as we would like. A very dear friend of mine made a wonderful film called Code, debugging the gender gap in software a few years ago, and highlighted some of those issues. 49% of women in undergraduate degrees, but 18% in computer science. So let's talk about that. Does this hamper us, folks? I mean, do we need to attack it? How can we attack it? And does it hamper us from growing in the way we want to grow?
It hampers everybody. One of our core missions at Galvanize was to build a more inclusive opportunity for anybody to have an opportunity. As we say, anyone with the ambition, drive, and determination should have an opportunity to be an entrepreneur or engineer. When we started from the very beginning, we focused on gender inclusion, and we had gender parity in all of our classes. We tried to be 50% male and 50% female. Obviously, inclusion is far greater than just gender. It's every sort of consideration of gender and sex, etc. It's certainly a problem here, but it's pervasive everywhere in the industry. And I think, as a community, we can continue, and I think we are doing some of the most creative workforce redevelopment and training, and we should be building some of the most progressive workforce policies that give everyone opportunity for diversity. And one of the things I often say if I have a forum like this is that if you are an employer and you're in a leadership position, and that your requirement is that some sort of undergraduate degree be a requirement for your jobs, then you are part of the problem. Those are antiquated, archaic ideals, and anybody, particularly in a technical circumstances, whatever zip code they were born in, whether affluent or not, should have an opportunity. And those skill sets can be acquired in any non-traditional way, and they can be just as great, maybe a better employee that came from a great education and background. And that's something that we've been huge advocates and proponents across all of our campus. We do scholarships with the behemoths. Google pumps money into that. You bring those companies to this community, they do that. Google, we have scholarships with. IBM, Airbnb, Uber, have all invested in our students to help build inclusive opportunities.
Well, I love the challenge in that. Dave, I know you wanted to, did you want to get on this one? Or?
Yeah, I just think, it doesn't help, that's for sure. I mean, people with diverse backgrounds, teams that are coming with individuals coming from different perspectives, I think build better companies, have a better outcome. So diversity helps. And I think to get political, I think the White House administration, rules on immigration are brain dead. And that's one of the ways we get diversity into this country. That's where some of our most successful entrepreneurs and talented people have come from. They've immigrated to the U.S. We still don't have that many people here. I don't have a background in national security, but I don't think that it's really helping national security. So I just see it as a downside, and I just use that to go into diversity and get raw on topics for your family.
Well, that's good. I'm not going to continue to encourage a political theme, so I'm going to move on from that one. But go ahead, Kirk.
Just I think it hinders us significantly. It's funny. For the smart people that are considering moving here, when they're doing due diligence, and of course I tell them all the great things, the sun, lifestyle, culture, etc. The smart ones they say, you got to tell me the 3 things that aren't good. And my answer to that, I have to answer it when I'm saying, 1, if you don't like people visiting you, because they'll visit you all the time. 2, the wind. I hate the fucking wind. And 3, it's so white bread in Colorado, it's ridiculous. And in my portfolio, I can count probably at least 5 times in the last 10 years where I had 5 highly qualified top African American candidates to be executives at my companies, and I couldn't get them to come here, and that was the main reason.
Yeah, a real challenge. And I think the only editorial I'll offer there is, in a world of software, particularly today, diversity of lens, right? Diversity of perspective. People who look at problems in different ways, more creatively, from different backgrounds, solving problems differently, thinking about how to break up the work differently, those kind of things is massively important. And so when we see that every day, and that those lenses come from backgrounds, and they come from experiences, and they come from biases that people have endured, and those kind of things. So it's very important. Let's leap to another one. Weed. Well, we're going to be controversial. Good, bad, indifferent. Does anybody give a fuck? Developers can't seem to like it, but pardon me, I shouldn't cuss. I've already cussed a few times. I kind of cuss a lot. Anyway,
kind of developers. Those that write code or the ones that build buildings, or both?
I hope the ones that write code, because the ones that build buildings are like moving heavy shit. So
you don't want crane operators smoking weed. No crane operators smoking weed.
We're we're building some pretty cool companies here. We've led the nation, which is what Denver does. You know, we're pioneers, we were risk takers, and we took this concept and we moved it forward, and now the whole nation's looking at us. They're looking at us for tech around the industry. They're looking at us for business practices, legal services, accounting services, expertise, consulting, you name it. We have started to enter every field related to the business of weed. We get a lot of feedback about the urban center in terms of challenges about it all must relate because we legalized weed. And I will tell you, our response is consistently, people have been smoking pot in Colorado pretty much since the first plant was planted. And I'm not sold. I'm not going to say that I don't think that there was some cultural things that opened up some transient populations to drift back through Denver and stick around. I know that for a fact. That is it. But we're a growing city, and as we grow, we don't get to grow in just the parts that work wonderfully. If we grow more in our homeless population, we grow more in our transient population, and we grow more in our startups. So what I have to say about weed is that it's here. I think some of these companies are killing it. I think we've done this with grace, class, and dignity, and we're showing the country how you can break into a new business and lead the way.
I just don't like the jokes about it.
I do too.
I like it's become so associated with Denver because we were first that I think I don't think it's not a problem. I think there's a lot of great stuff that's come about it, except it's associated with our brand of Denver, and I think we're bigger than that.
It's like, I don't disagree with things Tami said, but it is funny. Like, you guys, a lot of you travel, right? But it's like every time somebody's picking up your bag in like Manhattan, they're like, where are you from? Denver. Tell me about the weed. Tell me about the drugs. You're like, no, stop, read. Okay, go ahead. Anyone, last one or two on this, and then we'll move on.
I mean, in all seriousness, for me, I used to go out to Silicon Valley and try to help our companies raise capital from the VCs out there. 15 years ago, it was like, oh, all you guys do out there is ride your bikes and snow ski, and you don't work hard. So certainly adding that third element, they hit me up with that third element in the last few years.
Has it helped?
I think it's actually helping us attract talent, not because they can come out and do that, but I think it has put Colorado again on the map as a place where we are progressive, independent thinkers that want to look forward. And I used to be part of a group, I still am part of a group, that used to try to attract Ivy League talent to come to Colorado. And we used to spend a lot of money and a lot of time investing in these programs to try to get this talent to come out to Colorado. We don't really need that program anymore. People are flooding in here from schools across the country that want to come and live and work here. And I think it's partly that because they think, look, this is a progressive place where you can go and build something. So I think it's put us on the map in some ways.
Cool.
I couldn't agree. I mean, really agree. I mean, there's killer pros and cons, but what Tami and Jayne said about we want to be known as a progressive, forward-thinking place, and clearly being the first to move forward on legalizing marijuana, having a mayor that's supporting legislation for dreamers and making this, a city that welcomes people and that this is a place where everybody belongs. I think that's really important to the culture and the creative class that really will move this country forward. We want to be known for that. Now, weed has its pros and cons of all the crap that comes with it, but I do think it is more important that we're symbolic of that we're on the edge of being progressive.
So take that same concept. Go ahead, Dave. What?
Better than being Charlotte and known for the transgender bathroom thing. So
yeah, probably,
sure.
yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Better than being known for a fight necessarily. So let's take that idea of being progressive, forward-thinking, edgy. Tell me about food and beverage, hospitality. How important is that? How are we regarded? Anybody want to chime in here?
Well, yeah, I think the weed thing is actually good. Yeah, right? You know, I've traveled all over the cities, and we work in restaurants, guest chefs, and, I feel like we're like a pirate clan in the back, right? I don't particularly do that stuff, but it's in all the restaurants. If we drug tested, I'd have no employees. So it's definitely cool. I think it's great. It is. It also brings a lot of people
smoke
to the
weed
city.
in Code, smoke weed in Elevated, and
Yeah,
Cranes.
exactly,
No.
right? It's great for tourism. Not only are they coming here to ski, snowboard, do all the other things, Red Rocks, but now that's one more thing why people are coming here. I think it's great for the city. It's progressive. I was just in Hawaii, and you think in Hawaii they would have it legalized. They don't even have that legalized there, and they're always telling me, oh, Troy, what's it like in Denver? You know what I mean?
Sure.
We're all getting high all the time.
And bridge from that, though, to where I was also trying to go is bridge to our food and beverage industry. Are we progressive in food and beverage? Are we progressive in hospitality? What do you guys think about that? Are we leading edge there? Even though, obviously, look, we're never going to be in New York. New York's got a scale that's astronomical.
I think we are. I mean, Jim can speak too. He's got restaurants, so does Kyle. I don't know if anyone else has restaurants. They're not. They're probably not the best things to bet on. I probably don't have any. You probably don't have any venture.
I said I like to make money.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a long story too. But I went through 100 investors. I talked to 100 different people, and 3 people gave me money.
Wow.
You know, luckily we made it, and now people knock on my door asking if they can invest. We don't need that now. But back to the question about hospitality and food industry here. I mean, we've got 2 James Beard Award winning chefs in Denver or in Colorado. One's in Boulder, one's in Denver. The food scene here, I don't know about you guys, but it's on fire. I mean, every time I turn around, I can't keep up. I'm opening some of them, but a lot of people are opening a bunch of them too. And it's exciting. I mean, when I look at the map, always New York, Chicago, or LA, that's just because they got more and more people. But for the amount of people that we have in this state and city, I would put us up to anybody in across the U.S. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, right? And Troy's comment earlier, whenever we were doing Cholon, and Lon was kind of thought the New York scene was lame, right? We were in the Great Recession still, right? Everyone was doing comfort food, you know, burger joints. It was right after you opened up Tag, and we were building Cholon in the heart of the recession. And everyone's like, "You are crazy! What in the world are you doing?" I'm like, "Just watch. Denver is gonna be one of the next spots, not just for tech, but for culinary, for all things creative that were taking shape." And you know, we were right, and we were absolutely right. And I think at that time, if anybody remember, Charlie Palmer came. We opened on the corner of 16th and Blake. Charlie didn't make it, but Cholon was really at the very beginning of sort of this massive culinary renaissance that came through. And I'd say Denver's on fire ever since then, from everything Troy's done, everything that Fruition friend Alex, and then Brian Dayton. I mean, Denver's on fire. We're super spoiled. There's so many great restaurants to go to now. It's amazing.
Kyle?
I think we're get involved in food and beverage. It's always been like an essential part of placemaking. People like to eat and drink, and if you can provide that at a high level, it's a big draw. But looking to the future and where Denver really has an edge, it's the market hall format. Everywhere they're happening, they're working at a high level. You have Avanti that's doing incredible numbers. You have Central Market, The Source, even some suburban stuff at Stanley. But people want that more grab-and-go format, and they don't want to answer to all the formalities of a multi-course meal. Keep the price point down. We're working on a project called Zeppelin Station that's supposed to open around the first of the year. It's like food hall version 7.0, so it's 6 counters, multicultural kind of flair to it. So it's the banh mi guys from South Federal and poke guys from Chicago that are doing something, but it really appeals to an urban demographic. And you got the wood fires, and the lights go down later at night, a couple bars. So really looking at some kind of different formats for food and beverage that are a draw for this generation of people.
Two quick data points. Then I want to shift gears a little bit and get Jayne and Kirk in on a couple things, then a couple of wrap-ups from them, and see if you all have any questions. The data points that are fascinating is, I think one thing is the expertise to head count in Denver, or the expertise to door count in food and beverage, and it's not something you can measure, it's subjective. But one interesting idea is, has anybody seen the documentary Somm? Anyone raise your hand? Have you seen this? Right? The Master Somm program is essentially an accreditation program for sommeliers. There have been roughly 200 of them in the 40-year history of the thing. Obviously, California has the most, 27. Nevada has the next, 14. Guess who has the next most with 11? Colorado. New York has 5. It's an interesting benchmark for kind of an expertise to head count. And if you think about the servers in this town, if you think about some of the chefs in this town, some of the food and beverage folks, the bartenders, Alex winning, national awards, there's a very high expertise to headcount ratio here. So the question for Jayne and Kirk then is, as you guys, do these kind of lifestyle things come up as you're talking about attracting people? Do you talk about this kind of stuff? Food and bev, weed, housing, education for your kids?
Makes a huge difference, and especially if, a lot of my clients are out in the Bay Area looking to move here, and they're all talking about that. It's about cost of living, it's about schools, it's about restaurants, it's about days of sunshine, it's about proximity to the mountains. So all of this and the infrastructure part is a huge attractor to talent out here, and will continue to be. Helps having the airport, right? It will continue, that hub will help us as we continue to grow.
Yeah, I would agree. It's the package deal, and a lot of times we're trying to recruit people from New York and San Francisco, so the big comparison to be made there. So, you had this on your list, but some of the things are negatives when they start asking about education, and I'm spoiled because my kids went to school in the Boulder Valley School District, but all the districts aren't like that in Colorado. So, there's certainly some of the other downsides that I know you wanted to hit on a little bit, Harris.
You know what we have to do, though? We have to educate people and continue to educate people about how great it is here. There still is a bit of, I moved out here from the East Coast, and people said, oh my gosh, you're moving out there, it's so cold, because they watch a Broncos game and it's snowing in November.
Sports.
So we still have some education to do around how fantastic it is out here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the things I think we've done a poor job as a state, not just a city, but a state, is talking about lifestyle and the mountains and the outdoor activities.
Yep.
And that's been the highlight. And again, back to people that look to invest capital, that's not really high on their list to make money necessarily. But other things are risen above in some cases, that like the other cultural things, we don't highlight them enough.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. I mean, look at what's behind us. I mean, this is truly one of the more amazing complexes. I had a friend who's a writer for a New York paper, moves here and goes, oh my gosh, she's English. Like, oh my gosh, Harris, on a Wednesday, I just had a choice of like 7 things at your art center. And I'm like, we're not a frontier backwater. It's not like still a cow town. Come on. All right, last question.
Can I just add
yes.
I think that when we talk about building a place and we talk about all of these components that attract companies and people and give you this great quality of life, it's important to note these things don't happen by accident. I think sometimes you can look at a city or a place and say, wow, that just sort of spontaneously erupted. And the reason I point it out is because there's one thing Denver truly does better than almost any other city in the country, is we really do a great job of these long-term plans. We don't put them on the shelf. And these plans look at everything. Your city manipulates your every move. I don't know if you know that, and I don't mean city administration, I mean the physical environment. We carefully consider, where do you plant a tree? Where do you put a bench? Where do we put a housing development? Where do you put the park? And we're constantly figuring out how it ties together. Then over there, hard infrastructure, we place the soft infrastructure. Where do you need the school? How do you make sure the school is strong? Whenever you move one single piece in all of these plans, you disrupt something. So it's a never-ending process, but do know almost every area of our urban center is guided by a longer-term vision and a strategy. And you're just pointing out here, I mean, there's an entire plan for the future for this whole center to be completely rebuilt. So most people would say, that's great, look, it's the best, it's the biggest. But it's going to be bigger and it's going to be better because we're getting ready for the next phase.
Can I just throw out a quick idea?
Yeah.
I think we should all have a positive pitch on Denver and a negative pitch on Denver. And then we should decide as a team, all of us, like, is the city too congested? Like, if it is, like, traffic's bad, it feels a little congested, unemployment's 2.1%, let's give the negative pitch. Let's give all that together for, like, 6 months, slow people down while we get our infrastructure. And then when things get better, traffic frees up a little, like buildings get built, cranes come down, like, ooh, need more people, switch to the positive pitch. And if we do that across the whole city, like, we can temper, like, the flow of people into Denver.
And do we want to just have some billboards and things around town that we turn kind of red or green?
Yeah,
like it's like Fogo de Chão, whether you want the
Don't
meat
even bring
on
up
or
billboards
off.
Put it in
today.
Right?
restaurants, it'll be on the menu, like it'll be a secret word, and we know if we're on the positive pitch or the negative pitch.
I love it. All right, last question, and that's a perfect segue to what I want to end with, because I do want to let these guys ask a question or two, and I also don't want to keep you guys here too long. I'm sensitive. It's been a while. Last question, and nobody can say more than one of each of these, and you don't have to all answer. So to make sure I don't get more than 14 words or things, is what are we really sophomoric at? Like, what's the WTF? We just missed it. Like, why aren't we better at this? And then what's something that's a true, unique asset, like a true differentiator that's truly different about Denver? Even if we've said it before, throw them out relatively fast. Whoever's got answers. You don't have to throw them out in pairs either.
Okay. I think the people, people for me, for Denver, they're the best. Everywhere I've been, everyone's so friendly, so helpful. I think you get around the right people, and I was just this little guy, you know, and now all of a sudden, you know, I go up the ranks and meet this person, meet that person, and someone said it, I think, at the last class that it was. It's like, even if someone says no, it's a relationship that I've built. So it's all about the relationships and the people. For me, that's amazing in Denver.
I would say it's easy to get involved. This is a place you can move from anywhere in the country, and people say, oh, what are you passionate about? Oh, we'll go get you involved in that volunteer thing. So there are lots of things to do outside of work.
Very related answers. Yeah,
So,
Kirk?
give first community, and then transportation is our sophomore.
Okay.
Mine was people too. I think we have the authenticity of the Midwest with the sunshine of California. Kind of all comes together. And sophomoric,
analogy.
asking questions when Charlie Ergen and Mark Cuban are here. I thought some of those questions were a little sophomoric.
Good Lord. Yeah.
I'd probably go with you know, slow drivers in the left lane going, you know, in the mountains. That's just like, I hate to be a negative person, but fuck, Jesus, pull over.
Terrible.
Hopefully we'll have a Hyperloop or something.
Could we have a Hyperloop for Spear? Dear God, go ahead.
I could walk here faster from our campus than you know, I'd probably just put an exclamation point, I think, on a lot of people. I think the culture here is honestly what makes this place exceptional. I was having a dinner with a colleague the other night from New York that just recently left New York, and when you're on the East Coast, you pretty much stay in your social circle. So for instance, if you're in the finance industry, you hang out in the finance industry. Your kids hang out with them, you dine with them, you hang out in your little finance circle. If you're in the healthcare, you're in the healthcare circle. If you're in media, you're in the media circle. Out here, I don't give a fuck about your circle, right? We cross all sorts of circles, and as a matter of fact, look at this right here. I mean, the reason why we can move shit so much faster and get things done and come up with more creative circles is we don't just hang out in our little circles. They actually get concentric and cross over, and that's a cultural phenomenon that doesn't happen on the right coast. You have to continue to move left, and I think we are the bullseye as you move left for that mixing pot of culture and creativity that actually takes shape. So
a lot of great stuff. What else? Any others? Last couple?
I mean, it's a city of transplants. It's very open, welcoming. Part of that is we don't have a lot of history, so I think we're effectively creating it. And there's, you know, I think we went through it, but some positive momentum and some things that are not going in a very positive direction.
Cool.
Housing. I mean, we need to be ready, and we need to be innovative, and we're not where we need to be in that regard.
Oh, that's true. Then there's some ugly ass developments out there.
What's
right,
that?
That's sophomore.
Sophomoric.
There's some really shitty architecture going on.
Not Kyle. Not Kyle.
I was talking about affordability, but if we want to bash some of our designers.
Yes. All right, let's open it up to a couple of questions from you guys, and then we do have the Startup Brews Happy Hour out here. We're going to all go out there, and you can ask us some, because I know it's been long. Yeah.
So, very quick two-part question. Raise of hands. Is Denver the next tech frontier? Of the panel, we've all heard like good and bad things, but really of you, who actually believes it's yes, that we are the next tech? Okay.
Oh, without a doubt.
Okay, so on that then, where's that tipping point? Have we hit the tipping point already? And if not, where do you think it is where we actually become that big mecca?
It really depends on how you define it. And I think what we're talking about, it's already happening, right? And a lot of people, like, a lot of times I said, oh, you know, I do think Galvanize was a fun catalyst, but we also stood in front of a wave that was already happening. Ultimately, you know, this renaissance was going to take shape and is all over in every place. It's even, you know, it's happening all over the world, and it's happening in Detroit. It's happening in Austin. We got to make it what we want to make it. But are we a tech frontier? Hell yeah, tech is everywhere. If you don't have tech in your community, you're fucked. I mean, let's put it super simple. That's why we're fortunate that Google and Amazon want to be here. Everything is tech. So yeah, we are it depends on what you'd want to define. I think we need to define what success means to us and making it inclusive and affordable and cross-cultural and having, it's already happening and it will continue to happen if we have great leaders that collaborate and keep shaping it. But without a doubt, we already are, and we will continue to be one of the leading tech communities in the world.
Yeah, and we need to train and build our workforce more. I think what we forget about is not only is bringing people in here, but it's who we have now. You look at DPS, for example. I think it's 70% minority right now, and I'm part of a group that we're pushing to kids to get 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees. We need to do more pushes for them to get certificates. There's all sorts of things like that they need to be doing that will enable them to be the workforce. 95% of those kids stay here in the Denver metro area, so let's push them to get degrees in coding. And it's not a full degree, it's get a great certificate that they can go get a job and be the workforce for these companies.
I think the tipping point is having a really big tech company here. Like if Amazon comes, I think that's the tipping point. If not, if one of our companies grows to become an iconic tech company in the US, that's kind of the tipping point. Right now, we have a lot of tech, like Jim's saying, but it's still relatively small companies, just a lot of them.
Yep. There's an interesting unicorn count. Like Salt Lake has 4 unicorns. We don't have any. Unicorns are the billion-dollar companies with over $1 billion valuation before they go public. Mark, Darla, let's take 2 more from the audience, and then we'll break. Mark?
Following on from that, should the city focus on one particular element of tech to kind of get growth in a particular area?
I would reverse back to the telecom bubble. So I like the idea of having a diverse economy, both tech as well as, I think one of the great things about Colorado is we have a diverse economy besides tech. So my answer would be no. But Tami might overrule me. She's got more power there.
No, I agree. Look, I grew up in Flint and I came here from Detroit. I know what it means to not diversify your economy. I think the power of Denver's future in terms of tech, call it innovation, call it just leaders in business, is going to be the way we cross-pollinate and we bring all of these things together to build great companies.
Good stuff.
And the state has been picked cybersecurity as a focus, right? That has been the bully pulpit of the governor has been pushing that quite heavily. But clearly a diversity. But we can't play this. We have our own all sorts of little pockets, right? But there are certain areas in this country that have, like Boston, and certain areas in the East Coast that have far more biomedical expertise. We have a bit of a hub in Boulder, et cetera. But in general, I think more diversity is better. But the governor has pushed cybersecurity as a very big presence. But clearly, I think diversity, and as all these jobs rise, everything gets better, right? All of our restaurants are full. All of our lawyers are busy. All of our dry cleaners are busy. Everyone's busy as we keep rising the tide, right?
Really a virtuous cycle. Last question from the audience. Anyone? Everybody's ready for a beer, it sounds like. Let me do 2 quick thank yous. Thank you to my team, in particular Ashley Bailey and Matt Bowerly, who did an incredible job with the graphics, the coordination, all these things, under the supervision of Andy Hurt. Thank you very much to Denver Startup Week, Kate Barton and team, letting us do something here that was ambitious. They've never had a panel like this. They've never had this big a one that brought this many people on in a dialogue versus just sitting here and being talking heads and talking about their own companies. And then obviously, thank you for letting us try something intrepid, complex, hopefully not too long for you guys. Thank you for your attendance, your engagement, your laughter, your questions. And thank you finally to these guys who are freaking incredible and dear friends. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Harris.